My wife, Victoria Vance, the CEO of our company, had a thing for rewarding her top-performing employee with a dinner out. And for 7 years, I'd been secretly married to her. So, to finally get that public date, I pulled all-nighters for a month, grinding until I was practically seeing double, and finally secured the #1 sales spot. But she gave the dinner to the new intern. Julian just started, she'd said, her voice smooth and reasonable. He needs a little motivation, some encouragement. As my husband, you need to see the big picture. Next time you close an 8-figure deal, I promise, the dinner is yours. I'll even throw in that 10-carat diamond anniversary ring we talked about. For the sake of the company, for the sake of our marriage, I swallowed my pride and agreed. When I finally did land that $10 million account, I showed up at the Michelin-starred restaurant we'd agreed on. An hour passed. She never showed. My calls went to voicemail, my texts went unanswered. Just as I was about to head back to the office to find her, a notification popped up on my phone. The intern, Julian Cole, had just posted on Instagram. It was a photo of him and Victoria, clinking champagne glasses over a candlelit dinner. And on his ring finger, sparkling under the dim light, was the very same diamond ring she'd promised me. The caption read, "When the family pressure to get married gets real, good thing the boss has my back. Winking face ring." The comment from our coworkers poured in. "OMG, I ship it. They're so cute together." My phone buzzed with a message from a colleague. "Dude, I think you finally have some real competition for the boss's attention." I calmly typed a reply under Julian's post. "Congratulations, you two." 6 hours after she'd ghosted me, Victoria finally called. Her voice was frantic. "Don't misunderstand. It was just a dare from a game Julian lost. It's not real. You're the only husband I'll ever have. The ring was just a prop. I just loaned it to him. The game's over, and he'll give it right back to you. But I didn't want the ring anymore. Or the wife." "Don't bother," I said. "Let's get a divorce." A cold silence fell. Then, Victoria's voice turned to ice. "Because I didn't take you to dinner? Because I lent Julian the ring to help him save face? You want to divorce me over something so trivial?" Yes, there were 1,000 things I wanted to say, but if my feelings were just trivial to her, then anything more I said would just be whining in her ears. As I was about to hang up, I heard Julian's voice in the background. "Vicky, the fireworks are about to start. Get off your work call." Victoria's voice softened instantly. "Okay, 1 second." Then she was back on the line with me, her tone sharp with impatience. "How many times do I have to explain this? I headhunted Julian from top firm, taking him to dinner, helping him with a stupid dare. It's all about building his loyalty to the company. You're my husband. You should be on my side, putting the company first. Why are you always making things difficult for me?" she snapped. "If you put half of this energy into your work, we'd be a Fortune 500 company by now. You need to take a good, long look at yourself." "I have to go." The line went dead. I managed a bitter smile and sent her a text. "The company stock is yours. The apartment is mine." A long time later, her reply came through, practically vibrating with fury. "Still throwing a tantrum? You just want me to make it up to you, don't you? Fine, I will." I wasn't sure what she meant by that, but I found out a few minutes later when Julian posted a new story on his Instagram. A carefully worded apology. "Hey everyone, that last post was just me losing a bet. Nothing serious. Huge thanks to the boss for playing along, and for the incredible diamond ring. That said, I shouldn't have posted it online. It seems some malicious people saw it, and tried to stir up trouble, causing a headache for the company and for my boss. For that, I'm truly sorry. Last thing, she is not my girlfriend. Let's not spread rumors. You never know when it might trigger some dark, jealous obsession." The comments immediately identified me as the dark, jealous obsession. "Everyone at the company knows Ethan Hayes has a thing for Victoria." One comment read, "She only tolerates his crush because he's a top seller. He can't seriously think she's interested, can he? So shameless. It's obvious Victoria is into Julian. What right does an employee have to interfere in the boss's personal life?" Even a coworker I've considered a friend messaged me, "Man, she gave the dinner to Julian twice. They're obviously together. Why are you even trying? Just let it go. She's not into you." When we got married, Victoria insisted we keep it a secret to avoid favoritism and office politics. But now, this in turn was using her favor to make the entire company his personal fan club, and she did nothing. It was painfully clear who she really cared for. I sighed and texted my friend back, "Yeah, I'm done. I'm leaving." As my friend was texting his relief, Victoria's name flashed on my screen again. I meant to decline, but my thumb slipped and I answered. Her voice, crisp and commanding, cut through the speaker. "There's an error in a contract. I need you to fix it. Now." She forwarded the file. Unsurprisingly, it was a project Julian was supposed to be managing. She kept calling him top-tier talent, someone who would take the company to the next level. But Julian, for all his Ivy League MBA credentials, was a disaster. In 3 months, he'd shown up late nearly every day and screwed up even the simplest tasks, leaving me to clean up his messes. And I didn't just clean them up. My commissions for the work were often rerouted to Julian's paycheck as a performance bonus by Victoria. Before, I believed her lies. I thought she was promoting Julian for the good of the company, and I kept my mouth shut for the sake of peace at home. But now I saw through her. I wasn't going to be a doormat anymore. Isn't he your top-tier talent? Let him fix his own mistakes. I'm busy. Victoria's voice sharpened. Julian already apologized. What more do you want? I laughed coldly. Was that an apology? Have you read the comments? He was clearly taking shots at me, and she was pretending not to see it. I can't control what other people say, she said dismissively. Besides, if you hadn't thrown a fit, I wouldn't have had to force him to apologize, and no one would be gossiping. This is your fault for being so jealous. You have no right to be angry with me. She didn't care because I was the one being ridiculed. When Julian first started, rumors spread that he'd gotten the job through connections. Victoria had flown into a rage, demoting and docking the pay of everyone who'd gossiped. After that, no one dared say a word against him. She knew how to protect people. I just wasn't one of them. I've sent you the contract. If you don't fix it and the company loses money, it will be on you. Don't let your little temper tantrum affect everyone's livelihood. Her lecture was gearing up to be a long one. I hung up. She was the one who proposed the reward. She was the one who broke her promise. How is this my fault? She was the one who favored Julian at every turn. When I protested the first time she gave my dinner to him, she proposed a public date as a way to make it up to me. Because of our secret marriage, she suggested framing it as a reward for an outstanding employee. That way, even if we were seen, no one would suspect. After 7 years of hiding, I was used to it. The idea seemed reasonable. So I worked myself to the bone and secured the top spot again. And she gave it to Julian. Her excuse? Being number one in sales isn't the only definition of outstanding. There's also the most improved award. Julian has been on time every single day this month. This is to encourage him. No one was surprised. My colleagues looked at me with pity, like I was a clown. I'd stormed into her office, demanding an explanation. She fed me another line, and I, like a fool, believed her one more time, even going on to close the $10 million deal she'd asked for. And she didn't just stand me up again. She gave Julian the diamond ring meant for me. Then she had the audacity to use the good of the company as a shield while tearing into me for not being more understanding. I was done with this life. She thought my talk of divorce was a joke. What she didn't know was that the first time she gave my reward to Julian, I'd already tricked her into signing a divorce agreement. I had wanted to give her one last chance for the sake of our history. She threw it away. A wife this blind? I didn't want her. After I hung up, Victoria didn't call or text again. She was mad, giving me the silent treatment. She didn't come home that night, which was her signature move whenever she was upset. In the past, I'd always be the one to cave, worried sick about her safety. I'd call, apologize, and beg her to come back. She'd graciously accept, and we'd move on. Not this time. She used my love for her as a weapon, my concern for her safety as leverage. It was a cheap trick, disrespectful to me and to herself, but it always worked because I was a fool in love. But not anymore. On Julian's Instagram story, they were at a high-end cocktail bar, laughing, their faces close. Every glance they shared was filled with an easy, intimate understanding. Victoria hated the smell of whiskey. Aside from mandatory corporate events, she never touched the stuff. I remember one time I came home from a night out with friends, and she got back before I had a chance to shower. She threw an epic fit, accusing me of not caring about her feelings. I apologized profusely, was forced to shower until my skin was raw, and swore I'd never let her smell alcohol on me again. I even spent half the night on my knees by the bed before she finally forgave me. But now, here she was, not only tolerating the smell of liquor on Julian, but enthusiastically joining him for a night out. It turns out the unloved one has to walk on eggshells. The beloved one can do whatever they want. That was me with Victoria, and that was Julian with her. I let out a bitter laugh, ignored her, and for the first time in months, slept soundly through the night. When I woke up, I saw 99 missed calls from Victoria. I swiped the notification away and drove to the courthouse with the signed divorce agreement. On the way, I saw them again. Victoria and Julian sitting on a park bench, wearing matching hoodies. Julian had his face in his hands, looking distraught. Victoria was talking to him softly, dabbing at his eyes with a tissue. I pulled over and watched. After a few minutes of gentle coaxing, Victoria got up and went to a nearby food truck, returning with a carton of fries and a small stuffed animal. Slowly, Julian's mood seemed to lift. So, this is what it was like to be comforted by your partner. I remember a time when I was buried under the stress of a particularly tough client. I tried to talk to Victoria about it, but she cut me off with an impatient sigh. Ethan, can you please be an adult? You're a grown man. When you have a problem, you find a solution. What good does complaining to me do? Does talking to me solve the problem? She'd asked, her voice laced with disdain. I expect you to be more resilient than this. Don't make me question whether my husband is even a man. I was so ashamed. After that, no matter how hard things got, I never brought my work stress home again. Even when the pressure led to insomnia and my hair started thinning, I would just quietly get out of bed and sit in the study, terrified of waking her and ruining her mood. I didn't want to disappoint her. I didn't want her to think her husband wasn't a man. Watching her with Julian now, I realized she was perfectly capable of being comforting. Just not to me. Filing the paperwork was straightforward. The clerk just needed to verify the signatures on the agreement. Sir, since this agreement was signed by both parties and notarized, it's legally binding. I just need to process it. I opened Julian's Instagram and showed him the feed, a curated history of Victoria and Julian's budding romance, photo by photo, video by video. Just for context, I said with a dry smile. The clerk, who had probably seen everything, still looked a little shocked. Right, I'll get this process for you immediately. Even a total stranger could see their relationship wasn't just professional. How could Victoria have the nerve to insist it was? While I waited, I submitted my resignation through the company portal. Your divorce decree will be mailed to you within the week, sir. I thanked him and headed home. I'd expected Victoria to stay away for a few days, giving me time to pack. Instead, I walked in to find her in an apron, pulling trays of steaming food from the oven. She smiled at me as if nothing had happened. I stared at her, suspicious. Victoria had a temper, and her go-to move was the silent treatment. She never cooked. This was so out of character, I wondered if she'd poisoned food. Just then, Julian walked out of the master bathroom, wearing my bathrobe, his hair damp. The moment he saw me, a flicker of hostility crossed his face before being replaced by a warm, welcoming smile. Hey, Ethan. I got all sweaty running errands, and Vicky said I could use your shower. You don't mind, do you? He knew exactly how to push my buttons. Making a scene over something so small would just make me look petty in Victoria's eyes. Thankfully, I was almost out of here. Their life would soon have nothing to do with me. While I didn't respond, Julian's eyes landed on the dinner table. Wow, Vicky, these are all my favorite dishes. I never even told you what I liked. How did you know? So, the meal was for him. Victoria put her hands on her hips, beaming. It's easy. You always take a second helping of the things you love. We've had dinner twice now. I have a great memory, you know. As they bantered, I glanced at the table. I have a severe shellfish allergy. 8 of the 10 dishes were loaded with lobster. She'd known Julian for 3 months and had his dietary habits memorized. We'd been married for 7 years, and she'd completely forgotten that I'd ended up in the ER last month from accidental shellfish exposure. Her memory was great, all right. It just didn't have any space for me. Noticing my silence, Victoria finally remembered I was there and held out a plate and silverware. I waved her off. I'm not hungry. She froze, clearly not expecting me to refuse her peace offering. In the past, she could have boiled me a cup of instant noodles, and I would have been thrilled, drinking every last drop of the broth. The memory seemed to soften her expression. Julian, seeing his chance, put on a pained look. Ethan, did I do something to upset you again? Whatever it is, take it out on me. Please don't let me come between you two. Victoria, who had been about to say something conciliatory, immediately lost her patience. She turned to Julian, her voice soft. Stop apologizing for everything. I hired you to work, not to get pushed around. We've explained, we've apologized. If he's still upset, that's his problem. Then, she turned back to me, her voice cold. Since you're not eating, you can do something for me. Julian made a mistake, and he needs your help. You're going to tell everyone it was your fault. He's young, and he's the talent this company is betting on. We've invested too many resources in him for him to fail now, she continued. You're different. You're tough. Taking the blame will just be a temporary hit to your reputation. It won't affect your career long term. If you do this, we can revisit our talk about having kids. I'll give the Hayes family an heir. She said it like she was bestowing a great honor upon me. It just made me feel colder. I had agreed to be child-free because she said she was afraid of childbirth, that it would derail her career. I'd compromised for love. To her, it was just another bargaining chip. Willing to have my child, but only as a favor to protect another man. How pathetic. She pulled out her phone and sent me the details. Last night, while they were drunk, a client had called to check on the progress of a contract revision. Julian, wasted, had gotten into a screaming match with the client and then doxed him, posting his personal information online. The client was furious. Not only was he pulling the deal, but he was also suing Julian for invasion of privacy. What kind of person leaks a client's private info after an argument they started? If this went to court, Julian's career would be over, and he'd be crucified by the public. So that was it. The unprecedented home-cooked meal was just bait to get me to take the fall for Julian. I let out a derisive laugh. A screw-up this big, and she just expected me to swallow it. In her mind, was I anything more than a tool to be used and sacrificed at her convenience? Victoria seemed to assume I'd agreed. She knew I'd always wanted kids, and I'd never refused her anything before. She pressed on, lecturing me. It's good that you understand what's at stake. And ultimately, this is partly your fault too. I asked you to fix that contract yesterday, and you threw a tantrum. If you'd just done your job, the client wouldn't have called, and Julian wouldn't have made a mistake in a moment of weakness. Anyway, just handle it. The longer you wait, the more damage it does to the company. I shrugged. No thanks. Julian's your top-tier talent. A nobody like me isn't qualified to cover for him. My refusal caught her off guard. She raised an eyebrow, but, surprisingly, didn't explode. Is this still about the dinner? Fine. I'll take you out tonight. Happy now, she said, her tone weary. You've gotten so petty over the years. But I'm warning you. I'm giving in this one time. No one to quit. Don't push your luck. Pushing my luck? Wanting to have dinner with my own wife was pushing my luck. Trying to share my work stress was pushing my luck. Or maybe not wanting my wife to be intimately involved with another man was pushing my luck. Julian seized the moment to play the magnanimous victim. Vicky, he must still be upset about the ring. Here, I'll give back to him. Hopefully that will calm him down, so he'll stop targeting me. With a few choice words, he'd reframed my refusal to take the blame as a personal vendetta against him. Victoria's brow furrowed, her eyes boring into me as if I were the villain. Julian took off the ring and held it out, his hand held so tightly his knuckles were white, as if he was terrified I might actually take it. I just snorted. He immediately let his hand fall, feigning defeat. Ethan, what do I have to do to make you stop being angry? Seeing Julian so dejected, Victoria's heart clearly went out to him. She pulled him away from me and tossed a cheap plastic ring in my direction. Here, the waitress gave this to us last night. You can have it. That diamond ring is dirty now that Julian's worn it. It's not right for you. I'll buy you a new one later, she said, her voice rising in frustration. Can you just stop this? Do you have to ruin a young man's life to be happy? I didn't move to catch it. The plastic ring bounced off the floor and rolled under the sofa. My message was clear. I wasn't taking the fall. At that, Julian squeezed out a tear. He lunged forward and grabbed my arm. Ethan, if it makes you feel better, hit me. Just please don't take it out on Vicky. She and I are just colleagues. Her work is already so stressful. If she didn't explain something perfectly, please don't misunderstand her. Just blame me. On the surface, he was surrendering to me. In reality, he was painting me as an unreasonable bully to Victoria, while simultaneously showcasing his own maturity and understanding. As expected, Victoria's expression toward Julian softened, while her gaze on me turned to ice. What else do you want? Before I could answer, a sharp pain shot through my arm. Julian, with his back to Victoria, was smiling maliciously. His fingernails were digging directly into a burn I'd gotten while cooking a few days ago. I hissed in pain and instinctively yanked my arm away. Julian stumbled backward dramatically with a loud oof. Victoria rushed to his side. Julian, are you okay? Even though my heart was already dead to her, seeing her panic over him still sent a pang of bitterness through me. The scene was eerily familiar. Once, while preparing a surprise birthday dinner for her, I'd burned my arm on a hot pan. Victoria had glanced over and said, "There's gauze in the bedroom. Take care of it yourself." A moment later, as if feeling a twinge of guilt, she'd added, "I ordered some burn cream for you on Amazon. It's just a small spot, it's fine. Don't forget to have those files ready for me by morning." But now, for Julian's arm, she looked like she would gladly take the injury herself. Julian clutched his arm, groaning. "I'm fine. I'm sure Ethan was just upset. He didn't mean it." His words snapped Victoria back to me. She stormed over and slapped me across the face. "You are a vicious man." I didn't see it coming. My head snapped to the side, my cheek burning. Her finger was practically touching my nose. "Ethan Hayes, why do you have to bully him? Get on your knees and apologize to Julian right now, or I will never forgive you." I laughed coldly and rolled up my sleeve. "Look at my arm," and then asked me why I pushed him. The half-healed wound was broken open, oozing blood and pus. A flicker of embarrassment crossed Victoria's face before she turned to scold Julian. "Vicky, I didn't know he was injured there." Julian pleaded. "I was just so worried about you. I was afraid you'd get hurt." Victoria's expression softened again. She turned back to me. "He meant well. He was just trying to stop us from fighting. She always believed him. Or maybe it wasn't belief. Maybe she just wanted to side with him, so she'd accept any excuse. Since he hurt you first, you don't have to kneel and apologize, she conceded. But you did push him and cause him to get hurt. So, as a thank you for his good intentions, you'll help him out with that little problem. Her twisted logic made me laugh. So let me get this straight. I have to take the fall for him, and I should do it out of gratitude. Victoria nodded, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Don't make it sound so ugly. This is for the good of the company. You're my husband. If the company succeeds, you succeed. Isn't that right? She patted my arm reassuringly. Once this whole thing blows over, I'll take you to an auction. We'll pick out an even better ring. This time, it will be yours and yours alone. I jerked my arm away. Stop dangling carrots in front of me. I'm not biting anymore. Seeing that even her concessions weren't working, Victoria's patience finally snapped. Ethan, why are you being so selfish? You don't care about the company, and now you're trying to ruin Julian's future. She kept saying it was for the company. But Julian had made a catastrophic error, damaging the company's interests, and she wanted me, her top salesman, to sacrifice myself for a disposable intern. The irony was suffocating. You're right, I'm selfish. So I'm going to do something selfless now. I'm divorcing you, so you two lovebirds can be together. Victoria froze, her face flushing with anger. She raised her hand and slapped me again. You bastard. Julian and I have a professional relationship. That's it. You're my husband. How dare you talk about us like some outsider spreading rumors? And you dare to mention divorce to me? How dare you? The sting on my cheek was sharp. I didn't hesitate. I slapped her back, harder, sending her stumbling to the floor. You know damn well what your relationship is. Scrambling back up, Victoria pointed a trembling finger at me, her voice shaking with rage. Ethan Hayes, you hit me. You just wait. I will never forgive you for this. Not even if you beg me on your knees. She spat out the threat, grabbed Julian, and slammed the door behind them. Before leaving, she made sure to use a broom to fish the cheap plastic ring out from under the sofa. If you don't want it, fine. I wasn't going to give it to you anyway. Seeing the triumphant glint in her eye as she left, I almost laughed. Did she really think I'd be heartbroken, that I'd search for that ring and treasure it after she was gone? Did she think that gesture would wound me? The old me would have. I gave a self-deprecating smile. Her arrogance and confidence today were products of my own years of surrender. I looked around at the messy apartment, but didn't bother cleaning. Instead, I started making calls to the headhunters and rival companies that had been trying to recruit me for years. I'd always turn them down to help Victoria build her company from the ground up. I thought I was building a life with the woman I loved. Turns out, I was just building my own prison. From now on, I was living for myself. The next day, after a successful meeting with a new firm, I picked up my finalized divorce decree. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I pulled out my phone to check on the status of my resignation, only to find it was still pending. My employment would automatically terminate after 30 days, but my new job started sooner. This was a problem. I messaged HR. The response was vague. You have to talk to Ms. Vance. I don't know anything about it. I tried calling Victoria. No answer. Texted her. No reply. On a hunch, I opened Instagram and went to Julian's profile. Sure enough, there was a new video from a celebratory dinner at a fancy restaurant. In the background, I could see Victoria's slender figure. The caption read, "When someone tries to frame you, a boss who knows the truth will always have your back. Justice prevails." It was cryptic, but I knew what it meant. I called my friend at the office, a guy named Chun. "Hey man, what's with Julian's latest post?" Chun hesitated. "Ethan, you haven't heard. Victoria held a company-wide meeting. She announced that you lost your temper with the client and sabotaged the deal. She said the company's reputation is damaged, and we're being sued, and it's all your fault." Dude, what the hell happened? That doesn't sound like you at all. After a few more questions, I pieced it together. To protect Julian, Victoria had preemptively thrown me under the bus, pinning the whole disaster on me. She'd also given my director position to Julian. As CEO, her word was final. No one questioned it. I thanked Shun and immediately called the client. I had handled his account for years, so I had his direct number. Victoria had only reassigned the account to Julian because he had no sales to his name and she wanted to give him an easy win. I never imagined he could screw up a done deal so spectacularly and get himself sued in the process. Victoria could spin whatever narrative she wanted internally, but the client knew perfectly well who had screamed at him and leaked his information online. And with the doxing post, it wouldn't be hard to trace it back to Julian. I got the recording of their phone call from the client and headed to the office. I had two things to do: finalize my resignation and clear my name. When I walked into the office, I was met with a barrage of hostile glares. The client Julian had alienated was a big player in our industry. Losing him didn't just tank our quarterly numbers, it jeopardized future projects. Julian had screwed everyone over. Before I could say a word, an enraged co-worker flung the contents of his cup at me. A disgusting-looking green smoothie. "You shameless bastard. You screw up and try to blame someone else. I worked overtime for a month on that deal, and you destroyed it all with your big mouth. You set all of us back to zero." I dodged, but the stench of kale and bitterness filled the air. I pulled out my phone to play the recording, but just then, Victoria appeared, her heels clicking authoritatively on the polished floor. "Did you really think you could force my hand by threatening to quit?" she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Ethan, you're 35 years old. In this industry, that's ancient. You're obsolete. Without me, no company will touch you. I've been patient with you because of your contributions to this company," she continued, her voice rising. "But you refused to appreciate it. You chose to make a scene. So don't blame me for being ruthless." Julian, standing beside her, chimed in with faux sincerity. "Vicky, Ethan is a veteran employee. If he admits his mistake, apologizes to the client, and takes full responsibility, maybe you can give him another chance." Victoria nodded, stepping toward me. "I can forgive you, but just taking responsibility isn't enough. You will get on your knees, apologize, and then you will lick this mess off the floor. Do that, and I might consider giving you a menial position here, so you can collect a paycheck." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper only I could hear. "Ethan, I'm being generous. Do this, and I'll even forget that you hit me. But if you defy me again, then fine. We'll get a divorce. Let's see how a broke, divorced, middle-aged man like you find someone new. Think carefully. This is your only chance to apologize." So that was her game. She was convinced I couldn't survive without her. I smiled. "All right." My colleagues crossed their arms, ready for the show. Victoria let out a sigh of relief. "It's good that you see reason, but my patience has its limits. Don't think you'll get another chance if you mess up again." As she droned on, I pulled the divorce decree from my jacket pocket and threw it at her face, cutting her off. "You misunderstand, Ms. Vance. We're already divorced. There won't be a next time. And please sign my resignation forms. I have an onboarding session at my new company to get to." The paper fluttered to the ground. Victoria stared at me, stunned. She bent down, picked up the document, and examined it, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Ethan, when did you ever sign a divorce agreement? Do you think you can fool me with this fake document?" Her words hung in the air, followed by a sudden, dead silence. All eyes in the room darted to Julian, and a wave of whispers rippled through the office. What? Ethan was her husband? So we've been blaming the wrong guy this whole time. No wonder he was so pissed when she took Julian to that dinner. It was his own wife. I totally get it now. This is insane. So the rumors were true. Julian really did have an in with the boss. Yeah, we all saw it. He couldn't even make a simple copy without screwing it up. Victoria is a perfectionist. She'd fire someone for a typo. But with Julian, it was always, "It's okay, don't worry about it." I knew something was up. Guest talent doesn't matter as much as a pretty face. Ethan brought in millions for this company, but it was nothing compared to Julian's looks. The color drained from Julian's face. He looked at Victoria with a wounded expression, clearly hoping she would leap to his defense like she always did. But Victoria was oblivious to him. Her mind was racing, trying to figure out how I could have possibly divorced her. Seeing her confusion, I didn't mind spelling it out. "Remember when you stood me up the first time? And I brought a document for you to sign?" The first time she'd canceled on me, her excuse had seemed flimsy. A seed of doubt had been planted, but her words had swayed me, and I told myself it was just a dinner. We'd been married for 7 years. I had poured my life into her and her company. Every dime I earned went to her, leaving me with just enough pocket money to get by. I had helped lift her from a girl from a small town into a powerful CEO. We'd lived in a cramped basement apartment and survived on expired ramen. Now that we'd finally made it, I couldn't bear to let it all go. So when she made another promise, I chose to give her one more chance. It wasn't about the dinner or the ring. I needed to see, once and for all, if there was any love left for me in her heart. I had a lawyer draw up a fair divorce agreement and brought it to her office. I thought she'd notice, but she was too busy on the phone with Julian, laughing and flirting, to even glance at what she was signing. As I walked out with the signed papers, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Relief that she hadn't caught on. Emptiness that the normally meticulous, detail-oriented woman was so distracted by another man that she signed away her marriage without a second thought. I'd never seen her so happy, so radiant. She was like a teenager in love. It was in that moment that I knew. Maybe she had never really loved me at all. Maybe it was time for me to leave. And just as I suspected, she continued to disappoint me, cementing my resolve to walk away. My explanation left Victoria speechless. Then, her face contorted with rage. Ethan, you tricked me? I trusted you. That's why I didn't read it carefully. After 7 years of marriage, you betrayed me. Julian's eyes lit up. Ethan, how could you do that to Vicky? You took advantage of her trust. Does this mean all those other documents you had her sign? He clapped a hand over his mouth as if he'd spoken out of turn. Vicky, the division of assets. Did he? Victoria ignored him, her gaze fixed on me. How could you use my trust to trick me into a divorce? I just shook my head, a humorless laugh escaping my lips. Was it really trust that made you sign it? Or were you just in a hurry to get back to your phone call with Julian? I paused. I seem to recall telling you to read it over. Given the circumstances, I'd say you got exactly what you deserved. A flash of regret crossed her face. She remembered. She remembered being so giddy from her conversation with Julian that she'd rush me out of her office. The woman who constantly preached to her employees, read anything you sign 800 times, had signed her own divorce papers without a thought because she was distracted by another man. Her guilt lasted only a second before she switched back to indignation. So what? As my husband, you shouldn't have even considered divorce, let alone tricked me into signing it. Ethan, do you call that being a responsible person? It was her mistake, but just like always, she was trying to pin the blame on me. In the past, I might have argued, fought back. But after 7 years of her irrational arguments, I was tired. There was no point. Say whatever you want, I said. As for the assets, I think the agreement is fair. My salary and commissions were more than enough to buy the apartment. So I'm taking the apartment, and you can have all the company stock. I wasn't a fool who would walk away with nothing, but I felt I was being more than generous. Legally, I was entitled to a share of the company we built together. But I knew she'd fight it, and a legal battle would drag this out for months, maybe years. I just want a clean break. The apartment was enough. I could sell it and start over somewhere new. Victoria held the divorce decree, her hands trembling. She read it over and over, her chest heaving. Finally, she looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. Ethan, is that all you have to say to me? Is there nothing else? I slapped my thigh. You know what? There is one more thing. A flicker of hope crossed her face. I held up my phone and addressed the crowd of gawking colleagues. I know you're all angry about the lost client and the lawsuit. I get it, but you're angry at the wrong person. The man who screwed up is Julian Cole. And to clear up any confusion, I have a recording of his conversation with the client. Why don't we all have a listen? Julian paled. You can't. Everyone's suspicious gaze immediately shifted to him. He realized his panicked outburst was a dead giveaway. I mean, Ethan is about to be fired. You can't trust any evidence he presents. He's just trying to frame me. Everyone in the office knew Julian's work ethic, or lack thereof. They had only believed Victoria's story because she was the CEO. They couldn't imagine she'd lie about something so critical to the company. But now, knowing I was her husband, knowing she was so distracted by Julian she'd accidentally signed her own divorce papers, they were starting to see things differently. Given his track record, Julian was by far the more likely culprit. No one spoke, but all eyes were on my phone. The air was thick with tension. Julian looked desperately at Victoria. Vicky, look at this. Victoria's lips were pressed into a thin line. She knew that if I played that recording, not only would Julian be disgraced, but her own credibility as a leader would be destroyed. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. Do you have to do this? I almost laughed. Of course I do. Did she think I'd come here just for show? She hesitated, then spoke again, her voice strained. Will this make you happy? Yes, it will. My reputation was on the line. Of course, clearing my name would make me happy. Victoria looked away, avoiding Julian's gaze. Then do it. That was strange. She was acting as if she were giving me permission, as if I wouldn't have played it without her consent. Whatever. I pressed play. The recording started, and Julian's drunken, slurring voice filled the room. A few colleagues grimaced in disgust. Victoria had always drilled into us. A phone call is just as important as a face-to-face meeting. You need to give the client your full attention. Stand up when you speak. Your posture affects your tone, and a perceptive client will notice if you're slouched or lying down. It shows disrespect. We all followed her rules, but Julian clearly was above them. The source of his confidence was obvious. Victoria's face hardened, and that was just the beginning. As the recording played on, the crowd's anger turned to shock. Julian wasn't just dismissive. When the client asked a critical question, he couldn't answer. After fumbling for a moment, he became belligerent, and started yelling at the client. Everyone knew the conversation must have been bad to lose the deal and get sued, but Julian's sheer arrogance was stunning. The whispers grew louder, some of them reaching Victoria's ears. How has he not been fired for this? Is the boss really going to let him get away with this? Is she willing to sink the whole company for him? If this gets out, how are we ever going to land new clients? Victoria's expression grew darker with every comment. The recording finally ended. Julian, unable to face the glares, shrank behind Victoria as if afraid he'd be attacked. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. A sense of relief washed over me. I smiled, waved goodbye to my former colleagues, and turned to leave. Victoria grabbed my arm. "Where are you going? Didn't I agree to let you play the recording? What more do you want?" Her face was a mask of exhaustion and impatience, as if I were being an unreasonable child. I shook her hand off. "What do you mean you agreed? I had the client's permission. That's all I needed. Did you think I wouldn't have played it if you'd said no?" She grabbed my sleeve again, her grip tight. What is that supposed to mean? Playing that recording didn't just humiliate Julian, it undermined my authority. I allowed you to do it. I let Julian face the consequences, even at the cost of my own reputation. Aren't you satisfied? What else will it take for you to drop this and agree to remarry me? It finally clicked. She still thought this was all a game, that I was using the divorce as a threat to get my way. She thought I was forcing her to choose, to prove that I was more important to her than Julian. She thought that by allowing me to play the recording, by giving me what I wanted, I would immediately come running back to her, ready to be her loyal workhorse again. I laughed out loud. When did I ever say I'd remarry you if you let me play a recording? She stared at me, shocked. Julian has paid the price. You've had your revenge. Isn't that enough? It was like she was having a conversation with herself. Think back. Did I ever say playing that recording would make everything okay? I asked. And do you really believe this is all about Julian? Our problems started long before he showed up. I couldn't even remember when she had started finding fault with me, when her respect had turned to disdain. Our issues ran deep. This wasn't a temporary spat that could be fixed with a single concession. I pointed to the divorce decree in her hand. I'm not trying to make you do anything. I genuinely want to be done. Victoria, let's just end this amicably. She stared at me, her grip on my sleeve unwavering. After a long moment, she sighed, her eyes filled with frustration. Ethan, you went behind my back. You got this decree finalized. What is it you really want? I don't understand. These are all such small things. Why are you making such a big deal out of them? Shouldn't a husband and wife be a team? Why can't you be like other men, supportive, understanding? Why do you always have to fight me? She pleaded. Fine, just tell me. What is the point of all this? Even now, with all the facts laid bare, she still thought I was just making a scene. I had been so patient with her for so long, always compromising whenever she threw me a crumb of affection. So now, anytime I expressed a valid grievance, she saw it as a tantrum for attention. Even my filing for divorce, she saw as a tactic to force her hand. Hearing my continued refusal, Julian's expression shifted. When I said the words, "end this amicably," a look of relief washed over his face. He quickly whispered to Victoria, "Vicky, he's just trying to threaten you into giving him more. Maybe you should give him some space to cool down." Victoria seemed to seize on this idea, but her eyes remained fixed on me. "What else do you want? Just tell me." I met her expectant gaze and shook my head. "There is no other motive. Just sign my resignation papers. I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore." Her face hardened. "I've given you a chance. If you keep this up, I really will be done with you." I looked at her, a weary smile on my face. "You've got it backward, Victoria. I'm done with you." She flinched as if I'd struck her. Her eyes, usually so strong and composed, filled with tears. She started hitting my chest with her fists, her voice breaking. "Ethan, you know I hate that word. Why would you say that? Why would you twist the knife like that?" Yes, being abandoned was Victoria's greatest fear. But did she think she was the only one who could feel pain? Did she think it didn't hurt when she chose another man over me, time and time again? Why should I have to worry about her feelings anymore? I had done nothing to deserve this. Where her family had tried to sell her in a marriage to an old widower, I was the one who helped her escape. We ran away together, worked our way through college. I even gave up my spot in a master's program to get a job, so I could support her through grad school. Back then, we loved each other, even if we never said it. The day she graduated, she proposed to me and told me she wanted to start a company. I was with her every step of the way, from nothing to the success she had today. She used to say she would repay me, that she would be good to me for the rest of our lives. But over time, she started to take my devotion for granted. Then, she started to feel entitled to it, and it was never enough. She created an idealized version of a perfect husband in her head, and I could never measure up. The criticism started subtly. She complained that I wasn't romantic, that I didn't say the right things. Then she started picking on my clothes, my manners, my lack of an Ivy League degree. She became ashamed of me. What started as backhanded comments turned into open complaints and finally outright disdain. Belittling me became her habit. She forgot that this was the same man she fell in love with. She forgot that if it weren't for me, she wouldn't be where she was today. She forgot that the only reason I didn't have that fancy degree was because I was working to pay for hers. Or maybe she hadn't forgotten. Maybe it just didn't matter anymore. That past was a story she had lived, not a foundation she valued. I caught her hands as she continued to hit me. The love that was once in my eyes was gone, replaced by a deep, weary exhaustion. I had poured so much of myself into her, and in the end, I wasn't even left with basic respect. Victoria, let's just stop here. Let's part on decent terms. I don't want us to get to a point where we can't even stand the sight of each other. The 7-year itch. It's a real thing, I guess. But it doesn't matter anymore. You found someone you like. I wish you both the best. I tried to give her a dignified exit, but her eyes just grew redder. She felt my coldness, and a flicker of panic entered her gaze. How could this be happening? How could Ethan not want her anymore? They had been through so much together, overcome so many obstacles. They had finally made it, so why was he leaving now? She had to admit, she had favored Julian. His prestigious degree, his polished manners, his sophisticated background. He made her feel like she had finally overcome her own humble origins. Both she and Ethan had grown up in a small, forgotten town. She had almost been sold off like property. While Ethan's situation hadn't been that dire, their struggle to get out, to make it to a state university, had been equally arduous. Back in their small-town high school, they were the big fish. But in college, they realized how far behind they were compared to the kids from the suburbs. Those kids had read books she'd never heard of, understood cultural references that went over her head. She felt an invisible wall between them, a sense of inferiority that began to gnaw at her. Even after becoming a CEO, successful and wealthy, she still felt that insecurity around certain people. Julian was one of them. He was everything she wasn't. City-born, effortlessly stylish, with a degree from a world-renowned university. When he sat beside her, listened intently to her ideas, and agreed with her vision, that gnawing feeling of inadequacy vanished. It felt like she truly belonged in this new, elevated world. It was a feeling Ethan could never give her. He was, like her, a product of that small town. Now that her status had changed, it was easy to see him as not being on her level. But now, with Ethan actually leaving, she didn't feel relief. She just felt empty. Ethan might not have Julian's polish or his fancy MBA, but they had a shared history that no one else could understand. They were woven into the fabric of each other's lives. They shared a bond forged in desperation and hardship. Every evening, a hot meal would be waiting for her, no matter how late she got home. When she traveled, he'd text her weather alerts for her destination. And even though she'd laugh and say, "I'm a big girl, I can check the forecast," he never stopped. He always noticed the slightest hint of her being unwell before she did, preparing medicine and cooking special broths to help her recover. She had taken it all for granted. The thought of losing it made her feel like a part of her was being stolen, leaving a gaping hole. And who else knew her story? Who else knew where she came from? That past, as painful as it was, held memories she cherished. If Ethan left, there would be no one left to share them with. Without Ethan, would she even be the same person? A wave of dizziness washed over her. She had never, not once, imagined a life without Ethan. He was a fundamental part of her existence, someone she assumed would always be there, accepting her flaws and all. Regret, sharp and painful, hit her. This was a terrible miscalculation. No, she had to get him back. With a newfound resolve, she grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the assembled employees. "You've always wanted me to go public with our relationship, right? Fine. I'm doing it now. Is that what you want? You want a candlelit dinner? I'll take you. You want a ring? I'll buy you one." Julian, who had been silent until now, spoke up in a small, wounded voice. "Vicky." She ignored him, pulling me in front of everyone. "For those of you who don't know, this is Ethan Hayes, my husband. We've been married for 7 years. My relationship with Julian is purely professional. I value his talent, and that's all. From now on, I don't want to hear any more rumors. My husband is the jealous type, and it upsets him." The employees exchanged bewildered looks. Julian looked so mortified he could have melted into the floor. Victoria didn't wait for my response. She started pulling me toward the exit. "There. Are you happy now? Let's go back to the courthouse and undo this. Let's stop fighting and just be a family again. You wanted to take that belated honeymoon last year, right? As soon as we fix this, I'll book the tickets. How does that sound? You wanted me to be there for your birthday? I can learn to cook. I can learn to bake a cake. We'll celebrate properly next month, okay? And kids. I know you've always wanted kids. The company is stable now. We can start trying. The more promises she made, the more she realized just how much she had neglected him. Panic started to creep into her voice, and she looked at him with an earnest, desperate hope. But as she tried to drag me away, I pulled my arm free. It was too late. If she had said these things before, maybe I would have given her another chance. But I had given her so many chances, and she had squandered every single one. A person's heart isn't a mirror. You can't just wipe it clean after it's been shattered. I'd already made my peace with the end. I was ready to start over. And only now, when I was already gone, did she decide she wanted me back. I'm a stubborn man. Once I make a decision, there's no turning back. I met her pleading, confused gaze and sighed. Victoria, I'm serious. For the sake of what we once had, just sign the papers. I don't want to drag this through the courts. Let's just have a clean break. She trembled, tears welling in her eyes. As she looked at me, a final, devastating understanding seemed to dawn on her. This was real. There was no going back. She listened to my words. Then, looking utterly defeated, she signed my resignation form. With everything settled, I gathered my box of personal belongings and left. Victoria, who had always refused to give me a ride to avoid suspicion, pulled her car up beside me. The window rolled down, revealing a face stripped of its usual arrogance. She looked at me with a complex expression and sighed. Get in. I'll take you home. The irony was not lost on me. In 7 years as her husband, I'd never been allowed in her car. Now that we were divorced, I was finally getting the offer. I almost laughed, but I just shook my head. No thanks, I called an Uber. Victoria paused. Get in. I need to go back anyway, to pack my things. You wanted the apartment, right? So I'll be the one to move out. Hearing that, I didn't refuse. It was a conversation we needed to have. If she didn't move her stuff, I couldn't sell the place. I reached for the back door, but she unlocked the front passenger seat. I hesitated. To avoid gossip, she had a strict rule. I was never allowed to sit in the passenger seat. If we absolutely had to travel together for work, I sat in the back. I had argued that it was just basic etiquette, not treating her like a chauffeur, but she was adamant. After Julian arrived, I wasn't allowed in her car at all. That only fueled the office rumors that he was her boyfriend, and I was a pathetic stalker. 7 years of marriage, and no one knew. But now that we were divorced, she was willing to grant me the small courtesy of a couple. The door was open, so I got in. As soon as I sat down, my eyes landed on a bobblehead of Julian stuck to the dashboard, his smiling face nodding at me. So that was it. The reason I wasn't allowed in her car after Julian started wasn't about avoiding suspicion. It was about protecting their private space, keeping me from seeing the little trinkets that marked his territory. A bitter laugh escaped me. Victoria followed my gaze and stiffened when she saw the Julian bobblehead. I gave him a ride to a client meeting once, she explained hastily. He said my car was too plain and added a few decorations. If you don't like it, I'll take it down. She fumbled with the figurine, trying to pry it off the dashboard. I held up a hand. Don't bother. It's fine. It had clearly been there for a long time, long enough for her to stop seeing it, for it to become part of the background. She only noticed it now because I did. I suppose I was like that bobblehead to her, a familiar, unremarkable part of her life, easily ignored, easily discarded. Her hands grew clumsy with panic as she struggled with the adhesive. Forget it, I said, my voice flat. Aren't you supposed to be driving me home? I was leaving. None of this mattered anymore. Victoria bit her lip, looking like she wanted to say more, but she just put the car in drive. The ride was short and suffocatingly silent. Back at the apartment, she sank onto the sofa out of habit. Aren't you here to pack? I prompted. She looked up, flustered. It's hard to find a new place on such short notice. Just give me a little time. I promise I'll be out as soon as I can. I looked at her. With her money, she could buy a new penthouse apartment tomorrow, let alone rent one. This was just a tactic, a way to buy more time to try and win me back. But where was this effort when it mattered? Why wait until someone's heart is completely broken to start showing you care? I felt no pity. Find a hotel for now, and get your things out as soon as possible. If you really have nowhere to go, you could always stay with Julian. You're already subsidizing his rent. A pillow flew across the room and hit me squarely in the face. The dam of her composure finally broke. Ethan, I told you, she screamed, her face flushed with rage. There is nothing sordid going on between me and Julian. You don't believe me? Fine. I swear, if I have ever crossed a line with him, may I be struck by lightning. I believed her. They probably hadn't slept together. But did that make it okay? Was an emotional affair not still cheating? I was wearing the damn green hat. Did it matter what shade it was? I just gave her a tired look. It doesn't matter anymore. We're divorced. My words deflated her instantly. Her anger vanished, replaced by a raw vulnerability. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. Ethan, are you really going to be this cruel? Are you really going to kick me out? The old me would have melted. For years, her tears were my kryptonite. She'd had a rough childhood, and her pride was so fierce that I always did everything I could to avoid hurting her. I solved her problems. I yielded in every argument. I stayed up all night listening when she was upset. I even taught myself herbal medicine to cook special meals to soothe her chronic stomach issues. But the more I gave, the less she valued it. So now, her tears meant nothing to me. I nodded, my voice firm. Yes, you have to go. Actually, you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm selling the place anyway. Do whatever you want. If she wouldn't leave, I would. We were divorced. I wasn't going to share a roof with her. When Victoria first heard me say it doesn't matter, a flicker of hope had crossed her face. But my next words made her jaw drop. You're selling the apartment? She asked, incredulous. I nodded. But this was the first thing we bought with the money we earned together, she cried. This place holds so many of our memories. This is where our dreams started. I thought you wanted it because it meant something to you, not so you could just sell it off. She followed me as I walked into the bedroom. Look at this sculpture. We bought this on our first anniversary after we graduated. And these roses on the balcony, we planted them when we first moved in. You said flowers we grew ourselves would live longer, like our love. And this music box, you brought it back for me from a business trip. You said that whenever I missed you, I could listen to it, and it would be like you were here with me. My eyes started to burn. Not for her, but for all the wasted years. She was right. Every corner of this apartment was saturated with our shared history. But things don't change. People do. All the love I had poured into this life, into this woman, had amounted to nothing. The joy I felt when we first moved in now seemed like a cruel joke. She was relentless, pulling me into the kitchen. She pointed to the clay pot I used exclusively for her medicinal soups. Look, you said you'd make me soup for the rest of my life to hell my stomach. I cut her off with a cold laugh. But the desserts at those fancy restaurants taste a lot better than my bitter herbal soups, don't they? I only found out she'd been throwing my soups away from Julian's Instagram. He had posted a picture of the toilet, filled with the dark, herbal broth I had spent hours preparing. The next photo was of an elaborate dessert at a high-end restaurant. A slender, pale hand rested elegantly on the table beside it. I zoomed in. On the ring finger was a tiny, familiar mole. Victoria's birthmark. Julian's caption read, "The CEO is so over someone's cheap, homemade crap. That disgusting soup tastes like bitter medicine. My taste in restaurants is way better." She can't stop telling me how sophisticated I am. My homemade crap versus his sophisticated taste of a restaurant she paid for and he just ordered at. Victoria looked at me, stunned. How did you? I was just tired of it sometimes. I wanted to change. I won't do it again, I promise. Yes, she was tired of the soup and wanted something new, but I wasn't a dish on a menu she could swap out at will. She grabbed my arm. I know I've done a lot of things wrong lately, but in my heart, you and this home have always been my priority. This apartment is where we built our life together. Have you forgotten all the happy times we had here? I looked at her, my voice devoid of emotion. If this home is so sacred to you, why did you bring Julian into it? First, she had him wait downstairs. Then, she let him wait by the door. Then he was inside having a seat. The last time, they had dinner here together. If I hadn't ended things, would he have been spending the night next? I shook my head, clearing the thought. I pulled out my phone and started calling a real estate agent. Seeing me actually follow through, Victoria's panic intensified. She clung to my sleeve. If you sell the apartment, where will you live? I pried her fingers off my arm, one by one, and took a step back. I decided to be brutally honest, to kill any last lingering hope she might have. My new job is overseas. I won't be coming back. There's no point in keeping an empty apartment. She stumbled back a step. You're moving? Abroad? I nodded. Her eyes pleaded with me, but I refused to engage. You should pack your things. Soon. Her lips trembled, but she finally relented. I'll get a hotel. Just give me some time to move my stuff. I nodded. It had been a long day, and I was hungry. I went to the kitchen and started making myself a bowl of noodles, making just enough for one. She followed me in and saw me take out a single bowl. Get another one, she said, out of habit. I turned to look at her, and she realized her mistake. I hadn't made any for her. She looked utterly lost, but she didn't say anything else. She just quietly left the kitchen. I ignored her and went on with my cooking. That evening, my phone rang. It was the real estate agent. Mr. Hayes, we already have a buyer for your apartment. I was surprised by how fast it was. Okay, when do they want to see it? They don't need to, the agent said. They're willing to pay your asking price. No negotiations. They want to sign the papers as soon as possible. When are you free? I was baffled. Who buys an apartment without even looking at it? Even though I'd priced it slightly below market value for a quick sale, you'd think someone would at least want to walk through it. I asked the agent a dozen questions and reviewed the digital contract he sent over. Everything seemed legitimate. There were no red flags. I agreed to sign. The buyer's name was unfamiliar. Whatever. I just wanted the money so I could leave. The next day, I started clearing out the apartment. We didn't have many matching outfits. She bought a few sets of couples hoodies when we were first married, but after she started looking down on me, she stopped. She even forbade me from wearing mine in public. After Julian showed up, she threw hers out, claiming they were old. I, like a fool, had kept mine, unable to part with them. Looking at them now, I felt ridiculous. I tossed them in a trash bag, along with other relics of our life together. My old toothbrush holder, the plaster figurines we'd painted together at a street fair, and even the simple framed wedding photo hidden at the back of the closet. All of it was from years ago. I realized then that we hadn't bought a single sentimental item in the last few years. It seems objects are more honest than people. They don't tell pretty lies. Just as I was about to haul the bags to the dumpster, Victoria walked in. I hadn't bothered to change the keypad code. She stopped short, taking in the chaotic scene and the pile of our shared history destined for the trash. "What are you doing?" she cried out. "You can't just throw these things away. They're proof of our love." I laughed. "They're useless junk. They belong in the trash." Her eyes, red and swollen, fixed on the old clothes. "How can you throw out these matching hoodies? You said we'd wear them forever." She wiped at a tear. "Even if you're angry with me, they're still usable clothes. Why throw them away?" I snorted. "Look at them. They're from a decade ago. Can you honestly say they're wearable?" Victoria was speechless. She picked up one of the hoodies. It was faded and pilling, practically threadbare. We hadn't bought a new set in years. These were from our college days, purchased with money we'd earned working part-time at a campus mailroom. We were so broke back then, we could only afford the cheapest clothes. The poor quality, combined with the passage of time, had turned them into little more than rags. She stared at them for a long time, then looked up at me, her voice small. "These are old. If I bought new ones, would you?" I just waved my hand dismissively. "Ms. Vance, what you and Julian wear is none of my business." Tears streamed down her face. "Ethan, you know that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if we can wear them again." I couldn't help but laugh coldly. "We don't need new ones. The old ones will be fine. But where are yours?" Her face lit up with a sliver of hope. "Mine? I can find them, just a second." She rushed into her walk-in closet. Her clothes were meticulously organized, so finding things was usually easy. But after several minutes of frantic searching, she came up empty. Seeing her growing desperation, I decided to put her out of her misery. "Don't bother. You forgot, didn't you? You threw yours away yourself." A loud clatter echoed as a handful of expensive coats slipped off their hangers and fell to the floor. She turned to me, her face pale with disbelief. "That's not possible. You don't remember?" I continued, my voice merciless. "It was after I told you I didn't think Julian deserved that promotion. We got into a huge fight. You told me I had no right to question your decisions, and then you gathered up all those hoodies and threw them in the trash." My words jogged her memory. Her hands started to shake, her face a mask of regret. It's funny how easily people forget the hurt they inflict on others, and how desperately they want the other person to forget it too. "You threw out your own proof of love," I said sarcastically. "What right do you have to ask me to keep mine?" I had started to wonder if she had ever really loved me, or if I had just been the most convenient option for her at the time. I think I had my answer. With me, everything felt like a chore for her, a task to be completed. There was no passion, no joy. Only with Julian did she ever show that giddy, shy excitement of someone in love. Victoria looked at me, then at the pile of trash, and finally, she bit her lip. "If you don't want them, I do." I didn't care. I ignored her as she began salvaging items from the trash bags. After I finished clearing out my things, I urged her to finish packing. By the time the apartment was empty, the buyer arrived to sign the final papers. With the money wired to my account, I didn't linger. I left the city that same day. Victoria, under the guise of wanting to say a final goodbye, managed to get my hotel information. It didn't matter. I'd be gone soon enough. I didn't have many friends in the city, but I had a few. I met them for a farewell drink. One of them, my colleague Chun, shook his head in disbelief. "Man, you kept that under wraps. I can't believe Victoria Vance was your wife this whole time. It all makes sense now, why you put up with so much from her. I just thought you were a simp, but you were the real deal." Everyone at the office is still in shock. I just sipped my bourbon and smiled. Honestly, man, he continued, if she really loved you, she wouldn't have kept you a secret for 7 years. You just didn't see it. Everyone felt sorry for me. I felt sorry for myself. But it was over. Time to move on. After Ethan left, Victoria returned to the empty apartment alone. She had managed to buy it back through a proxy, thinking that if she could just hold onto the physical space, she could somehow win him back. But his decision to move abroad, to put an ocean between them, shattered that illusion. What was she supposed to do now? Ethan had only taken his own things, which didn't amount to much. His life had revolved around her. His money, his time, his energy had all been spent on her. Yet the apartment felt vast and empty. The divorce, the resignation, the move, it had all happened so fast. It felt like he had just vanished from her life. The day had felt like months. She collapsed onto the sofa, the energy draining from her body. Her phone rang. Her heart leaped. Maybe it was him. She snatched it up, but the screen read Julian. Her shoulders slumped. She answered. Julian's panicked voice came through the line. Vicky, what do I do? Everyone at the office is giving me the cold shoulder. I'm afraid to even leave my desk. Can you please come and say something? I'm kind of freaking out here. Victoria had forgotten. In her obsession with her own crumbling marriage, she had completely abandoned the mess at work. The employees were furious, and now that they knew the truth, they were undoubtedly taking it out on Julian. The fact that no one had physically assaulted him, yet was probably only out of respect for her, his very biased protector. A wave of irritation washed over her. Why did Julian need her to solve every little problem? Ethan had never bothered her with such trivial matters. Still, out of habit, she agreed to go to the office. She had to give the employees some kind of resolution, or their discontent would only grow. She dragged her exhausted body to her car and saw the empty spot on the dashboard where Julian's bobblehead used to be. The memory, which had once felt sweet and playful, now felt like a thorn in her side. She opened the glove compartment, took out the bobblehead and the car freshener he'd given her, and shoved them deep inside. They weren't just gifts. They were subtle declarations of victory. She had allowed it before, simply keeping Ethan out of the car. But now that he had seen them, she couldn't pretend anymore. At the office, she called an all-hands meeting. She told them the truth, admitted her own poor judgment, and announced Julian's punishment, a 3-month salary deduction. The employees were silent, but their exchanged glances spoke volumes. As soon as the meeting was over, the whisper started. That's it. He almost sank the company, and all he gets is a pay cut. When they blamed Ethan, he lost his director title, and they gave it to Julian. Now it's Julian's turn, and he gets to keep the title. What did I tell you? He's the boss's favorite. She'd protect him no matter what. Now that Ethan's gone, I guess this means Julian is officially moving in. Back in the conference room, Julian hadn't left with the others. He was unhappy about the pay cut, but seeing Victoria's grim expression, he kept his mouth shut. Then a thought occurred to him. As disastrous as this was, it had also resulted in Ethan and Victoria's divorce. Maybe this was his chance. With that in mind, Julian forgot about the lost salary and slid into the chair beside Victoria. Vicky, he said softly, you seem upset. Did Ethan take his anger out on you? If he's still mad, I can apologize again. I'll let him yell at me, whatever it takes, as long as you're happy. His apparent selflessness and concern were a small comfort to her. But the image of Ethan turning his back on her without a second glance was still fresh in her mind. It has nothing to do with you, she said, her voice flat. Just drop it. The dismissal stung Julian. He wasn't used to this, but he quickly rationalized it. So what if Ethan had been with her longer? Ethan was gone now. All Julian had to do was remain by her side, and he would eventually replace him. Vicky, you're not well. Let me take you home. I'm worried about you. Victoria suddenly remembered Ethan's parting words. If this home is so sacred to you, why did you bring Julian into it? A sharp pain went through her. She turned to Julian, her expression serious. From now on, I don't want you coming to my apartment unless it's an emergency. We'll conduct all business at the office. Julian froze, convinced he'd misheard. Victoria had been so infatuated with him, willing to hurt her own husband to keep him happy. Now that Ethan was gone, shouldn't they be closer? Why was she suddenly setting boundaries? She stood up to leave. Julian quickly grabbed her sleeve. Vicky, I'm not feeling well. And you know my place is a long walk from the subway. Could you just give me a ride home? He held his breath. When Victoria had given him money for his apartment, he had intentionally chosen a place far from public transit, creating the perfect excuse to ask her for rides. It had always worked, but today was different. He watched her, his heart pounding. She hesitated for a moment, then sighed. Fine, just this once. From now on, you can take an Uber. Julian nodded eagerly. Thank you, Vicky. He had a triumphant smile. It wasn't an enthusiastic yes, but she was still willing to drive him even when she was in a foul mood. There was still hope. They walked to the car, and he automatically reached for the passenger door. You can sit in the back, Victoria said, stopping him. He stared at her, stunned. She had never denied him the front seat before. Seeing his hurt expression, she didn't offer an explanation. She just repeated, sit in the back. Defeated, he mumbled an okay and climbed in behind her. The drive started in silence. Julian felt a growing unease and decided to break the tension. He leaned forward, about to speak, when he noticed the dashboard was bare. His bobblehead was gone. So was the air freshener he'd given her. Vicky, he said, a note of panic in his voice. What happened to the things I gave you? Did Ethan see them? Did he get mad and throw them away? Her voice was cold. So you knew all along that he would be upset if he saw them? Julian was caught. He hadn't expected her to see through his little games. He didn't know what to say. Victoria sighed. Julian, I've been thinking. Our relationship has lacked professional boundaries. From now on, we need to keep our distance. Today is the last time I'm driving you home. When your lease is up, you should find a new apartment. Why? Julian blurted out. Because Ethan has a problem with it? But you're divorced. Victoria didn't answer. She just kept driving. When they arrived at his building, just before he got out, he turned to her. Vicky, I'm in love with you. Her whole body went rigid. What are you talking about? I love you, he repeated, his voice rising. If you try to push me away, I don't think I can go on. She looked flustered. Don't be ridiculous. It's late. Go home. He gritted his teeth. You don't believe me? I'll show you how serious I am. He bolted from the car and ran toward the bridge overlooking the river. Julian, Victoria scrambled out of the car and chased after him. She caught him just as he reached the railing. He turned to her, tears streaming down his face. Vicky, I can't live without you. I'm not asking you to be with me. Just please, don't shut me out. Don't make me keep my distance. Please. She said nothing. He made a move toward the railing again, gripping it as if he were about to vault over. Julian kept his position at the company. That night at the bridge, just as he was about to jump, Victoria had called his name. After that, things settled into a new normal. She wasn't as warm to him as before, but she no longer rejected his advances. To the rest of the office, he was still the untouchable favorite. He wasn't discouraged by her moodiness. With Ethan gone, it was only a matter of time before she came around completely. He just had to be patient. Filled with a renewed sense of confidence, he walked into her office with a cup of tea. Vicky, this will help settle your stomach. She accepted it. He seized the opportunity. Vicky, that new project the team is working on. Could I be a part of it? Just to learn. A few minutes later, he walked out of her office, teacup in hand. He could hear his colleagues whispering behind him. He's learned his lesson. He's not asking for special treatment anymore. Well, he almost got fired last time. He has to be good for a while. The old Julian would have just demanded to be put on the project. The whispers filled him with rage, but he forced it down. He had to be patient. Once he and Victoria were married, he would make every single one of them pay. While Julian was plotting his next move, Victoria was contemplating her own future. Did she love Julian? Maybe a little, but it wasn't him she loved so much as the prestige he represented. Her journey with Ethan had been a constant struggle. They were both smart enough for graduate school, but they never had the money. She had an ingrained admiration for people with elite educations, and Julian, the supposed overseas PhD, triggered a sense of awe and inferiority in her. And this brilliant young man was completely devoted to her, supporting her every decision. How could she not develop feelings for him? Even when he made mistakes, she was willing to be patient, to give him time to grow. But her affection for Julian had destroyed her marriage. What had Ethan ever done wrong? He had walked with her through fire, supported her, loved her, and put her first in everything. He was her true partner, and she had pushed him away. Suddenly, a notification popped up on her phone. It was an alert for Ethan's flight. He was leaving for good today. She glanced at the time, grabbed her keys, and raced to the airport. She found him at his gate. He looked surprised to see her, but his expression was neutral. The weeks apart had been kind to him. The lines of stress around his eyes were gone. He looked relaxed, happy. She didn't know what to say. After a long moment, she finally worked up the courage. If you're ever unhappy out there, you can always come back. I'll always be waiting for you. Ethan just smiled, a sad, distant smile. That day will never come. He turned and walked down the jet bridge without looking back. She stood frozen, watching until the plane was out of sight. How could two people who were once so in love become complete strangers? She drove home in a daze. That night, a fever took hold of her. She felt awful, tossing and turning in the big, empty bed. In a half-conscious state, she called out, "Ethan, can you give me a glass of water?" The silence was her only answer. And then she remembered. He was gone. The realization hit her, and she finally broke down, sobbing into her pillow. Some time later, she felt someone calling her name, gently lifting her head and helping her swallow some medicine. She kept her eyes closed. "Ethan, is that you?" The hand on her shoulder paused for a second, then continued to minister to her. When she woke up again, it was noon. Sunlight streamed into the room. She felt groggy, but she remembered taking medicine. Was it a dream? It felt so real. Before she could sort it out, a cheerful voice broke the silence. "Vicky, you're awake." It was Julian. She turned her head and saw him standing by the bed, holding a damp washcloth, his face beaming. On the nightstand was a bowl with the dregs of some dark liquid. Victoria's expression shifted. "Was that you, who gave me medicine earlier?" Julian looked down, feigning the nervousness of a child caught doing something wrong. "I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't have come over, but you didn't show up at the office this morning, and I was really worried." It was Victoria's unbreakable habit to review the previous day's work every morning. "I know you didn't want me here," Julian said, his voice earnest, "but I was so worried. Please don't make me leave. I just want to take care of you. I'll go as soon as your fever breaks, I promise." He had done something kind, yet he acted so timidly. Victoria's heart softened. "I'm not blaming you. He wasn't Ethan, but she was so lonely. She needed someone." Watching Julian's busy figure as he fussed over her, Victoria thought, "I hurt Ethan, but that wasn't Julian's fault." Without Ethan, if she pushed Julian away too, how deep would her loneliness become? She didn't want to find out. This was fine. This was good enough. Julian quickly reclaimed his former status. He started making requests again. Victoria gave him a supplementary credit card to cover his expenses. At the office, he began asking for small favors, like being included in high-profile projects. The only thing Victoria wouldn't agree to was marriage. At first, Julian was patient, but months passed, and she still wouldn't budge. He started to get anxious. When she was cold to him before, he wasn't worried. But now Ethan was gone, and after her illness, she was warm to him again. There were no obstacles left. If she wouldn't marry him now, would she ever? He was getting desperate, but he didn't know what to do. His Ivy League PhD was a fake. He had been expelled from his master's program for academic dishonesty and had never even graduated. Furious at what he considered an unfair punishment, he had returned home and paid a forger to create a full set of credentials, including a PhD. He had applied to Victoria's company on a whim, thinking a smaller firm wouldn't look too closely. He had actually studied abroad, so he figured he could bluff his way through. It was a long shot, but he had nothing to lose. To his astonishment, his good looks and the aura of a high-achieving academic completely captivated the female CEO. Her bias, coupled with her blind worship of elite education, had made his life at the company a dream. But it wasn't enough. If he could marry her, he would get so much more. He caressed the credit card in his wallet. He could spend freely, but he still had to maintain a certain image in her eyes, so he couldn't be too extravagant. It was unsatisfying. Once he had that marriage certificate, his life would truly begin. Then, even if she grew tired of him, a divorce would be messy and expensive for her. She would have to pay him off to keep him quiet. He wouldn't make the same mistake as that fool Ethan, who had walked away with almost nothing. He leaned back in his office chair, scrolling through his phone. Thanks to Victoria's favor, he could get his name on a project, do nothing, and still collect a bonus. It wasn't that he didn't want to work, but every time he offered a suggestion, his colleagues would look at him with a mixture of pain and pity, as if he were a child making a mess. After the incident with the client, their attitude had become even more strained, so he had stopped trying. He preferred to stay in his office, enjoying the air conditioning and playing on his phone. He spun around in his chair. It hit him then. The reason Victoria had been so taken with him was his PhD, but since joining the company, he hadn't actually accomplished anything. Could that be why she was hesitant to marry him? So, if he could just achieve something significant, would that change her mind? Would she finally agree to marry him? The thought energized him. He threw his phone down and decided he would make a real contribution to the current project. The phone landed on his desk, its screen still lit. A local news alert flashed briefly before being buried by other notifications. It was a story about the arrest of a local forger who had confessed to creating fake academic credentials for numerous clients. The following weeks were frustrating for Julian. He had genuinely tried to contribute to the project, offering numerous suggestions, but his colleagues shot down every single one. They treated his ideas with open contempt. Thankfully, Victoria still had his back. After he complained to her several times, she intervened. The project team stopped arguing with him and silently implemented his ideas. Julian felt a surge of satisfaction. He was a genius, destined for greatness. These mediocre colleagues were too foolish to recognize his brilliance. When the project was a success, they would be amazed by his intellect and ashamed of their own stupidity. He pictured them bowing down to him, Victoria looking at him with admiration, eagerly discussing their wedding plans. As he was lost in his daydream, there was a sharp knock on his office door. "Who is it?" he asked, annoyed. It was Victoria's assistant. "Mr. Cole, Ms. Vance would like to see you." A grin spread across his face. He smoothed his hair and went to her office. But when he walked in, his smile faltered. Victoria's face was a thundercloud of fury. "Vicky," he said, trying to sound cheerful. "What's wrong? Who upset you?" She didn't speak. She just stared at him with a strange, piercing gaze that made his blood run cold. His smile vanished completely. She slapped a stack of papers onto the desk in front of him. "Some Ivy League PhD you are? Read this." Confused, he picked up the papers. The first page made his heart stop. His face went white as he frantically flipped through the rest of the documents. His hands began to shake. The forger who had made his fake degree had been caught, and he had given the police a list of his clients. Looking at Victoria's icy expression, he knew it was over. Her entire affection for him was built on her admiration for his supposed education. Now that the lie was exposed, everything was ruined. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He stammered, trying to think of a defense, but she cut him off. "We're done," she said, her voice like steel. "I'm also instructing HR to conduct a full performance review. If your contributions don't meet company standards, you can pack your things and get out." He had expected it, but hearing the words still felt like a punch to the gut. They had been through so much. He had taken care of her when she was sick. How could she be so ruthless? "Even if my degree is fake," he pleaded, "the time I spent with you was real. Taking care of you when you were sick, that was real." Victoria laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "You spent time with me? Did you not spend my money? You took care of me? Plenty of people could have done that. If it weren't for your fake credentials, you never would have gotten a chance. And don't act like you're some kind of saint. You used that credit card I gave you quite freely, didn't you?" Her anger boiled over. She grabbed a file from her desk and slapped him across the face with it. "I was a fool. I let my own husband suffer for you." What kind of spell had she been under to hurt Ethan for a smooth-talking con artist? Ethan didn't have a fancy degree or a glamorous background, but he was the one who had been with her through thick and thin. He was the one who had truly loved her, and she had thrown him away for a fraud. The corner of the folder cut Julian's cheek. He touched it and saw a smear of blood on his fingertips. His own anger flared. "Don't you dare act like you're the innocent victim here. So, I faked my degree. Did I force you to cheat on your husband? No. You were bored with your marriage, looking for a thrill, and you got burnt. Don't you dare pin all the blame on me. You think this will fix anything? You think Ethan will just forgive you and take you back? Dream on." Julian had always been the charming, elegant gentleman. He had never raised his voice to her. The sudden attack left her breathless, unable to form a response. He sneered. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue. Did I say anything that wasn't true?" he taunted. "A PhD? Look at actual PhDs. Most of them are bald by the time they graduate. If I had shown up with a receding hairline, would you still have thrown your husband under the bus for me?" They had a massive fight. Victoria screamed at him to get out, but Julian clung to her office desk, refusing to leave. He threatened to publicize every detail of their story if she tried to fire him. Victoria was furious but felt trapped. She wanted to fly abroad, find Ethan, and beg for his forgiveness. She was prepared to give him 70% of her company's stock as proof of her sincerity. With the company as a hostage, surely he would believe she had changed. But as she listened to Julian's histrionics in the next room, she felt a pounding headache. If she weren't trying to win Ethan back, she would have had security throw Julian out on the street. For a woman of her status, a little gossip about a fling was hardly a scandal. But now, with reconciliation on her mind, any scandal could become an insurmountable obstacle. She had already hurt Ethan so deeply. She couldn't afford another barrier between them. She had to be strategic, but she was out of time. Before she could deal with Julian, she received devastating news. The project that Julian had been advising on had imploded. His meddling and terrible decisions had not only wiped out all potential profits, but had also incurred massive penalties. The company was facing a catastrophic loss. She summoned the project manager. "How could you let this happen? Why did you let that fraud run wild?" The manager looked uncomfortable. It was then that Victoria remembered. The team had clashed with Julian, and they had come to her. But at the time, she had just recovered from her fever, and feeling grateful to Julian, she had sided with him. Her constant favoritism had taught the team that challenging Julian was a losing battle. In the end, this was her fault. "I understand," she said, her voice heavy with resignation. "Thank you for your hard work. I'll take full responsibility for this." The project manager looked relieved. As he was leaving, he muttered, "If only Ethan were still here. He always knew how to fix things at the last minute." Victoria froze. The manager realized his mistake, gave an awkward smile, and quickly left. There were other people named Ethan at the company, but they both knew who he was talking about. Her plans to fly abroad were put on hold indefinitely. Julian, realizing the magnitude of the disaster he had created, quietly disappeared without another fight. But Victoria couldn't leave. She had to stay and clean up the mess. That cleanup took 6 months. The company's structure was lean, and Ethan had worn many hats, single-handedly managing several key areas. Without him, the cracks in the foundation began to show, and then the whole structure began to crumble. Compounded by the losses from Julian's project, the company was hemorrhaging money. 6 months later, she filed for bankruptcy. Victoria sat on the floor of the apartment she had once shared with Ethan and wept. Julian, the top-tier talent she had staked her marriage on, had destroyed everything she had built. She was now deeply in debt, her credit ruined, and declared insolvent. Even this apartment, this last repository of her memories with Ethan, was about to be seized and auctioned off by the bank. This was her last night here. She pulled out the plane ticket she had looked at 1,000 times. The tears came faster. She had bought it the day she learned Julian's secret, ready to fly to Ethan. But then the news of the project's failure came, and she had to stay. She had kept the ticket as a symbol, something to show Ethan one day. "See, I wanted to come to you right away. I was delayed." But now, she took out a lighter and set the corner of the ticket on fire. There was no point anymore. If she were still a CEO, she could have tried to make amends with money to compensate for the pain she had caused. But now she was penniless. What did she possibly offer him? Her pity. She let out a bitter, broken laugh. The fantasy was finally over. Maybe there really was such a thing as karma. Some people, once you lose them, are gone forever.